All right, my man, Josh, dude, I'm super stoked. You are coming on the Alto, man. I'm super grateful for you for having me on the Holy Ruckus podcast a while back, and I'm great we're able to connect again, man. How you doing, brother?
What's going on, Leo? I'm doing well. I'm over at the DMV, the DC metro area, and so
Yeah.
in Maryland, it's nice. It's beautiful weather at the time of this recording, anyway. But yeah, man, it's so sweet to see your beautiful face and all the facial hair. I have none. For those that are listening, out. But you know what? Manhood is not just the folks with the beard. So there we go.
Hey,
Thankfully.
man, brother. Hey, dude, you know what? My wife would be like, "Hey, why don't you give him some of that?" Because she doesn't really like it, and she is coming back from a deployment tomorrow, a small one. So I actually got to trim it up tonight because it's looking kind of rowdy. But I digress. Anyway, so dude, man, I'm so stoked to have you on again, and just you're a great guy. You're doing some great work with the Holy Ruckus, man. You're crushing it over there, and dude, I'm super stoked about our conversation today because machismo, especially like, excessive masculine pride, that kind of finds its way in, definitely as us, as us Latinos in our culture, in our families, in our livelihood or in our lives. It finds its way in our spirits, in our psyche. But man, I think for all guys, this machismo is an issue, and it's definitely something we got to be aware of. But man, I'm super stoked to just talk with you about this as another young Latino Catholic. Man, so let's just kick it right off, dude. So when we talk about machismo, especially from a Latino perspective, maybe what comes to mind when you think of that?
Sure. When I think of it, I think of it's culture specific, like Latino, Hispanic, right? But it's rooted in this like overarching umbrella term of toxic masculinity, which we hear in Christian and Catholic circles. And so, just to frame it, I would say that machismo is, or how I've seen it, is just that toxic masculinity gone like pride level, Adam style, King Saul, like level, 15, like, and it's just this place of just like complete blindness to the other and just very self-absorbed, and it's damaging. It's generational wounds come out of it. And so, yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. I mean, because it's something that we need to be put on notice, because toxic masculinity is out there. I mean, that's the results of the fall, obviously. But Jesus' grace abounds all the more, right? Where sin is there, grace abounds all the more. So, it's not going to be all hum and drum, but it's going to be important topic tonight.
Amen, brother. Well, dude, okay, so you hit on a couple of good things there. And man, you said the word toxic masculinity. I was hoping that would come up in the conversation. And I was actually doing a little bit of, you know, just some digging on like exactly what a good operation or a good operating definition of toxic masculinity might be. And I found this definition. It's basically like excessive manliness based on kind of exaggerating the traits of like strength, lack of emotions, self-sufficiency, dominance, and sexual virility. So when we say toxic masculinity, we're kind of, at least at large, I know there's a lot of other meanings and definitions, but I think when we're talking about that, or when our culture's talking about that, I think they're talking about this toxic masculinity where these traits are like seen as the standard for what a man is or for what masculinity is.
Absolutely.
And I think you and I, we both know, and I think, a lot of our listeners know that, especially in the Latino culture, especially, among Latino males, I'm from a Mexican background. I'm Hispanic, but I was born in Texas, and I know you're Bolivian, but you were born in the States as well. Dude, I'd love to just see, like, have you seen this kind of play out in your own, this machismo-ness kind of play out in your own life, or like maybe in the lives of your family and friends growing
Absolutely.
up?
So growing up, I mean, well, thinking about it, when you and I first touched base about potential topics, this one stood out, but I don't know if it stood out for the right reasons for me, because I was like, well, I've never have I ever experienced it? And I because my dad was never around, right? So my
Oh,
dad
wow.
wasn't around. So I grew up pretty much without a father figure around, and I was raised by my grandma, you know.
Oh,
But
wow.
in peeling back the onion, I was like, well, how did I get there? Like, how did the Lord like look out for me and get there, even in my poverty of like emotional poverty? How did I get to this place of like without a father figure? And it comes from a result of machismo, of this toxic masculinity. that is painted in my family tree, unfortunately, right? And so how I experienced it was right away, just in re-looking at my upbringing with my father, and seeing him, and so he was active in my life for the first 5 years, and then he gets himself deported, commits a crime, and it's just, big shame on the family, finds his way back into the country. Crazy scandal story, man. How he finds his way back and tries to develop a relationship, gets caught again, gets deported. So like this whole like mess, it's worse than a soap opera, dude, like for real. But honestly, it was like this heavy stuff where I got to see what like toxic masculinity was, and like machismo. I call them, like, they're both synonyms for me in how they paint out. So the machista, right? Like the person who is accused of being a machista, or is someone who, is self-absorbed, that he can't see anybody else, right?
Wow.
He's just very prideful. And so, and it paints itself through, okay, so gender roles, right? Like the woman, like, you better be the one catechizing. You better be the one with the faith, because I'm the one working and hustling. Mom, you definitely need to be the one teaching the kids. You definitely need to be the one cooking and cleaning, because when I come home, I'm entitled. I'm entitled to my man cave. I'm entitled to my cervecita, my beer. I'm entitled to whatever adult entertainment I need at the time.
I'm entitled to relax, and the kids need to be under control.
Right.
Like, have them ready to just be in control, basically.
Right. Absolutely. Like, you got to put the hammer down, or I am. And I guess in my experience, it went from 0 to 100 really quick. So there was a lack of patience in the household. So me and my mom were kind of victims to a lot of physical abuse as well.
Oh man, I'm sorry, brother.
No, man, it sucked. But honestly, like, I mean, I could have been easily a statistic, right? Of like, dad not there, right? Does he graduate high school? Well, does he go to college? And then does he commit, like, how many times more likely am I to go to jail because, right, to not be a statistic? And honestly, like, by the grace of God, like, God put me with my 2 grandmothers back and forth. I would go do school in Maryland, and then on the weekends, and then in the summertime, I was with my other grandma in Virginia, and that's how it played out. And my dad would call here and there, and then I would visit him in Mexico, because he eventually finds himself as a Mexican citizen to be kind of close to the border. I actually went out to go see him, and I saw it. My first time experiencing anybody like cheating on their girlfriend was with my dad. I was 12 years old, and my dad like shows me, like, hey, like, I want you to meet someone that's really special in my life, this young woman, and then so I meet her, and I'm like, wow, Dad, like, this is so cool. Like, you guys seem so happy together, right? Spend the whole week with her, right? Awesome woman. And then come the weekend, and he's like, hey, Josh, I have another young lady I want you to meet. And I'm like, wow, okay, cool. Like, she must be like another friend. And he's like, yeah, you can call her that. And sure enough, it was another girlfriend that he had for the weekends. And then this was no social media, so there's no way they're going to find out about each other.
Yeah.
They're part of Mexico as well. And so we took a bus ride to the other part of Mexico. And so the chances of them ever meeting up, and I remember as a kid thinking, like, oh my gosh, he's figured it out. He's cracked the code. He's the man.
Yeah.
Right? And as a kid, I was thinking, this guy's a player. Like, he's figured it out, man. He's a pimp. Like, what a perfect system. Like, when you're bored with another one, you can just go to the other one. And then when you're bored with that one, come home to the other one. And depending on which one, like, and I was so twisted by that, because women were not people to be loved. They were people to be used. Right. And so that was like the framework. And yeah, absolutely. Did I get scarred by that moment? Like, absolutely. How could you not? How could you not view relationships that way? How could you not grow up somewhat molded by this, your father showing this? So definitely there was a lack there. But when it comes to that machismo, and what I saw someone that was never accountable, right? He would excuse himself from the table, essentially, like figuratively, like, right. Anytime there's conflict, anytime there's issues, right. Someone that is, has that machismo, he's going to run away from it. That's also why in our culture, and I don't know if you can attest to this, Leo, Latino men, we don't go to doctors. We don't go to doctors. We don't want that bad news. We don't want that bad juju. We don't want anything like, we don't want to be anywhere near someone telling us, hey, you got to change your lifestyle, homie. Like,
Yeah.
you can't be out here smoking and drinking. You can't be out here,
we're stubborn, set in our ways. And then we don't want anybody kind of coming in like, we're the chief. We don't want any other chiefs coming and tell us like, what's, what's up.
Absolutely, man. And so we're coming from that kind of culture, and it bleeds out in me too. It's like, ask me when the last time I went to a doctor, like, like it's embarrassing, but there is some of that. I mean, to a smaller extent, but, and then in the excusing yourself from the conversation, like if it's not going your way, you'll excuse yourself. And we see that in, in Genesis, we see that with Adam, right? It wasn't me, Lord. It was the woman that you gave me, the one that you gave me, the one that you put here with me. That's on you, Lord. So there's a lot of that too. And forget about it. Faith-wise, forget about it. Sunday is if I can fit it in, right? My mass, if I can fit it in, right? And we have the gall as men. And I was just talking about this on another podcast that I do. We have a Holy Ruckus podcast network where we run different shows. And one of them is Soy Católico in Spanish. And I was talking with a priest friend of mine about toxic masculinity a little bit. And so coincidentally, here we are. And he was talking about how Hispanic men would come up to him. And then when they wanted to get married and they earnestly want to get married to their future spouse, father asks him like, so are you going to church regularly? Like, what's that like? And he's like, padre, ya sabes, like, father, hay que chambear. We got to work. Right. and
yeah.
This, I was like, cause there's this coming to the country, right? If you're an immigrant coming to the country, right? It's this hustle mentality. It's this hustle mentality that I am what I am by the work of my hands. I am what I am by the work of my hands. And if that's, and I have to honestly like be about that, because at the end of the day, especially if he comes by himself, right?
Yeah.
He has his check, he mails out his check, or he cashes his check at the check cashing place, and then goes out and sends it to his wife and kids back home. And in our culture, we paint that as like very heroic.
Yeah, the hero. Yeah. And honestly, in some ways, in a lot of ways, that is heroic. And there's a lot of virtue in that hard work, that work ethic, that get after it mindset. But I know exactly what you're talking about, even though it hasn't really played out in my own personal experience, but I know exactly what you're talking about, where like, you know what, the faith, the emotional stuff, the prayer stuff, that's all for the women and the kids. But like at the end of the day, that's not really going to like pay the bills. That's not going to get us, that's not going to keep the lights on. That's not going to get us a lifestyle that we're dreaming of. So I need to go do that work. And in a way, I mean, the value, I mean, there's virtue in like the work ethic and the dedication, all that kind of stuff. That's good. I don't want to discount any of that, because that's amazing. But you're right. Like, to what degree, right? To what extent? And like, what are you sacrificing when you do all that? Like, no, I totally agree with you on that. I've seen that play out. And man, I love what you also, you said a lot of great things too in kind of this opening question, but I wanted to ask you, like, when you were talking about your dad and you said kind of like this absorption, I think you said absorption in self. Do you mean like, kind of like he was kind of, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you mean like kind of blinded to like how it's affecting other people, or how it's affecting you and your family?
Absolutely. Because that's what sin does, right? It blinds you to the recognizing the true, the good, and the beautiful in the other. So if he's intoxicated by his sin, he doesn't see the ramifications of it, the consequences, and he doesn't see the tethering that people have, right? It's this sad thing of, am I my brother's keeper kind of thing, right? The Cain and Abel story, right? Well, he's my son, but he doesn't have to make the same mistakes as me. Oh, okay, good sentiment. However, as a young impressionable kid as I was at 12, with no father figure to begin with, and then to have a little vacation with dad, right? I was there for 2 months, if I wasn't, and it was this like Stockholm syndrome kind of thing where, you're getting physically, verbally abused, emotionally abused, but yet that's dad,
Yeah.
and so you look up to him and you like, so there's this constant, like, should I go with him? Should I not? And so how could it not? But that's exactly what sin does, right? It blinds you to the reality of how things it warps the true, the good, and the beautiful, right? It comes from his hunger for connection. It comes from his hunger, like at the onset, he's alone, right?
Mhm.
He wants community. He wants love, right? But then it becomes perverted with the rest of it. The evil one finds that, finds that little space, right? That little nook and cranny to put himself there and to dominate. And it's happening, in Latino culture especially, and the kids are paying the price for it. And I see it when I was recently a director of evangelization and faith formation for a parish that was like, I'll say like 78% Hispanic, right? I any business that had to be done in terms of faith, sacraments, I dealt with the mom. Very rarely did I ever deal with the dad or meet the dad. If I met the dad, he was dropping him off. And he wouldn't himself go to mass. And so, because we've made faith into this feminine thing where, Mary, everything else, but Jesus, it's very almost superstitious kind of, and we keep him at bay. We'll kiss the cross. We'll get him tatted on our bodies, but that tattoo doesn't penetrate to the heart. And
Amen,
that's what
brother.
because that's where conviction will come. That's where sacrifice will come. But we keep skirting it. I was talking to a buddy of mine, a family friend who is from El Salvador, and that story I mentioned, like the classic, I'm going to come over to this country, I'm going to work. And so he has 2 jobs, walking to work at Taco Bell, all hours of the night, Taco Bell open, eat great, even late type stuff. And he's working hard, man, 4th meal status. And I finally talked to him, and he has a love for me and my family. He's my kids. And he's like, man, your girls remind me of my girls back home. I'm like, oh, you have kids? He has 2 girls back home and a wife. And I'm like, man, so like, how do you do that? And he's like, well, I got to send money, because at the end of the day, like, I got to provide. This is what I got to do. I'm like, I get that. And eventually then, as I get to know him more times, have more hangouts with him, I feel comfortable enough to say, like, sending money for a bicycle is great. Sending money for the birthday party is great. But at one point, I think they're going to just want you. What's the plan for just you? I was like, la bicicleta, es bueno, pero la presencia, it's got to be about the presence to fill that absence. And so we're kind of working through it as friends, trying to figure out how we can figure out a way to get him out there, because get him back, because it's all within his, but it's a mentality shift that I don't have to just provide with paying those bills, with paying the money. There's other ways that I can be a provider.
Yeah, man. Jeez, that's so powerful, dude. I'm so glad you said that. I mean, and before I forget, I also want to just say, dude, you are an example of, well, number one, God's grace, but also of absolute resiliency, man. With, I didn't know, the situation with your father growing up, and, bouncing between grandmothers, and, and then you're college educated, you're doing great things with the Holy Ruckus and with your family, and you're a provider. So, dude, you are, I mean, I just want to, like, dude, resilient, man. You're knocking it out, man. You're knocking it out of the park, dude. And I'm just super stoked to know you. And man, you just said a lot of good things. And like that last point where you said, it's not, providing is like not really always just about, paying the bills and like buying nice things and having the experiences. I mean, that's important. Don't get me wrong. But dude, like, you look at kids. I mean, I have 3 young boys. I know you have 4 girls.
I'm crazy. I have like 3 ladies, Gianna, Lily, Maria, Faustina, and then Joseph, and my new one, Judah.
Oh my goodness. Oh man. So five kiddos,
Starting lineup.
young kid. You got a starting lineup. There you go, baby. And so I don't have any girls, but I know I can talk directly from my three boys, 5, 3, and 1. And dude, like they just light up, man. Like when daddy gives them some attention, man. And like, yeah, all that other, providing is so important, and like working hard is important, setting a good example for like work ethic and just making it happen. But dude, I think both of us can speak from it. Like I didn't grow up with a lot, like materially at least. And it doesn't sound like you grew up with a lot materially either.
But that counted.
And yeah. And like at the end of the day though, what counted was like my dad spent some time with me. My mom spent some time with me. That's the things I remember, man. I didn't know that we weren't that well off, honestly, growing up.
Beautiful.
And and I'm not saying we were like real broke or real poor or anything like that, but what I remember the most is my dad making time for me a lot, and we still have a good relationship now. And for guys that are listening to this that are going to be parents or going to be fathers one day or are fathers now, just remember, man, like that extra vacation or that nicer school or that whatever, that nicer car, that's not always necessary. Your kids can do with less if they have you. You know what I mean? If they have more of you. That's that. And I love how you said that, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. Absolutely.
Go ahead, man.
Like, because eventually, I mean, that was in my childhood. My dad's still active in my life now.
Oh,
and
okay, cool.
That's that next part, because what are we going to do? Is this just going to be cyclical and we're just going to keep this going where, I mean, he was abused by his dad, I mean, he had his issues with his dad, and whatever he saw, who knows, right? And it wasn't until, I mean, I did have positive, men in my life, is a priest when I was in high school, like really like mentored me. And even to this day, I'm 32 years old and I still talk to this priest, and he like made sure, he was like, if you're going to do this, if you're going to walk the walk and do the Jesus thing, you got to drop some stuff off. And yeah, I absolutely resented my father. I resented God the Father as a result. How could you not? Right.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that tie-in where it's like you have issues with your biological father. Well, good chance you're going to have issues with your heavenly father. Right. Mm-hmm. Especially when it comes to authority figure, things like that. So it wasn't until that priest like really sat me down and was like, yo, let's heal, let's get in the box. Let's go to confession. Put that somewhere. I get it. You're hot right now. You're upset, but eventually, you got to work towards forgiveness. You'll never be able to forget, but there's got to be this disposition of like willingness to forget, coming from the fact that God forgives, and then he like forgets your sins. Once it's done, right? And maybe someone could correct me on that theology, but there's this: I'm not going to let it hang over you. Right. Mm-hmm. When I step out of the confessional, I'm a new creation in that moment. I'm no longer the alcoholic or the guy who watches porn or the, abuser, right? Or the addict, right? I'm a person who has to deal with his crosses, right? And so that's what it came down to in phone conversations with my dad. Am I going to still hold this over this man's head, or am I going to try to fight and claw to forgive so that he can be free? Right? Because I have a chance by God's grace to help someone be free. And sure enough, like me and my dad, we talk, every other month, once a month or whatever. He has a relationship with his grandkids on the phone, working towards one day, if that's what happens, we go over there or something, but we're on the road to healing. It isn't perfect, but at least I'm trying to be willing, because that's another aspect of like the machismo is like, the pride is so heavy that I can't lower myself to see your point of view or to even own up to I'm sorry. I'm sorry is weakness. Well,
yeah, dude,
that's what you're
totally
like Christ.
Totally right, bro. I mean, you hit a nail right on the head, man. I mean, dang, it's like you said, it's not perfect, but like you're taking the steps, man, bit by bit. And the most important thing is you're doing it in the context of your relationship with God. You're doing it in the context of the faith and in the context of your friendship with him. And then on top of that, you hit the nail right on the head with machismo, man. That's kind of what I experienced growing up. this like, basically like, you don't talk about your feelings. You don't really share them. If you have them or you share them, that's weak. Like basically I grew up kind of, and it wasn't necessarily my dad's fault or anybody's fault necessarily. I just kind of, where I grew up and how I grew up and the things I chose to get myself into, I basically grew up incredibly scared of like not being manly, right? And I grew up really hypersensitive to being weak or like effeminate or whatever. And yeah, I mean, I'll give you just to give you just little information on my background. But like my dad, so my dad, thank God I grew up in when my mom and dad stayed together. My dad was always around, and you know, he spent a lot of time with me. But he was in. I heard all these stories of him. He was in a gang growing up. He was wild, bro. Like he's got like stab marks on his back. Him and his brothers were just wild. And like he actually told me all these stories. He got drafted into Vietnam, and that kind of got him out of this crazy like lifestyle he was living, like getting shot at, knifing people, you know, in knife fights, fighting, just doing crazy stuff. Got him out of that, saved him. But he always told me these stories in the context of like, that's how I was. And then this is how my life changed. And then he actually came to the Lord. He wasn't Catholic a lot when I was growing up. He was actually non-denominational, and then my mom was Catholic. But at the end of the day, he had the faith. But I ended up taking that, his experience, and as a boy internalizing it and thinking that that was badass and that was the way to be a man. And what happened to me, like, even though I didn't grow up in the same circumstances he grew up, what happened to me is when I got of age, I was doing wild and crazy things, not the same level he was, but man, I got jumped. I got beat up a couple different times. And dude, for like 20 years, maybe 15 years after that, and I didn't really realize it the whole time, that wound of getting my pride hurt from getting like jumped, beat up by these guys, I felt like I wasn't a man or man enough for a long time. And for me, masculinity was like not being able to accept that I was weak to some degree, or that, I don't know, I guess for a long time, it was hard for me to like accept that that was just a situation when I was young, and it doesn't mean that I'm weak necessarily as a person. But, you know, so I just wanted to share that because that's kind of where like the masculinity I kind of grew up with was like, you know, you don't talk about your feelings. You're strong and you fight and you dominate, and like, you know, you don't really talk about your emotions, and if you have them, you should be ashamed of them in a way. And I was ashamed of my emotions, my fear, and I was ashamed that I had gotten like beat up and I was vulnerable like that. And that haunted me for so long, man.
That reminds me. Yeah, that reminds me of, and I'm not a huge, I'm an Eagles fan. I'm a football fan.
Oh no, man. Oh, I'm a Cowboys fan, dude.
Oh, I was going to say, I'm going to bring up the Cowboys. I'm bring up Dak Prescott, the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, man.
Who I have on my fantasy team. So he's killing it. Even though you guys suck, he's killing it. So it's all good. But he was saying, remember when he talked about, I don't know if you saw, he talked about mental health, and he talked about his issues. And I think he was talking about his depression, or just how fragile he was in regards to, I think, I forgot what it was. I wonder if it was the social issues that are happening right now in the Black community. I forgot what it was, or something with his family. But he was,
I don't remember either. Yeah.
It was recently. It was like in the past like month or two.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
He was open about his brokenness, right, and his emotion. And in one of the sports talks on Fox, Skip Bayless.
Skip insulted him, right?
Yeah, he's a
called him out.
Yeah, he called him. He's like, you're the quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, QB1. Like, I don't want to hear about your emotions. I don't want to hear about, suck it up, right? I mean, he could have said, be a man, you know?
Yeah.
But it was this idea of like, and it was immediately like consoling to see like all these NFL players come to the defense of Dak, in the sense like, this guy needs to, like, here's this guy pouring himself out and being vulnerable, and we're shushing him and saying, you know, shut up and dribble, shut up and throw the ball. Like, we don't need your masculine, or like that type of masculinity. Right. And there's a huge grace with being able to be up front and be like, man, I'm broken, but I'm trying to figure it out, you know? And that's that race that, you know, St. Paul talks about. That's that, you know, that walk, you know, it's just, I don't know. And that's the path to sainthood, really. I mean, that's all it is picking up your cross and walking with it. And so, I don't know, as much as I don't like the Cowboys, I really admired Dak. He showed out. Like, I'm going to talk about the issues in my mental health and how I'm trying to get through it. And this is a platform. Football is a platform. It's a job, but like it's a little V vocation. It's a job, you know? And I'm trying to, if I can touch one soul, like with this, like how many people heard that and were like, man, I got to be more upfront. Like it's okay to be emotional. It's okay to share your feelings in this manly sport that is football. And it is. But are we perpetuating a further stereotype of toxic masculinity within that? And so it plays into machismo. And then last thing, like in your experience, I wanted to bring in mine real quick. One that recently. So I work for a church. I mean, for the last 7 years, I've been working for parishes, right? In evangelization, right? That's my work, right? And then in my heavily Latino church parish, it's beautiful in the sense that the people, the parishioners, and especially the men, they don't have a lot of money, but they still offer up something in the offertory, their time. That's their treasure, their talents. And so when the church needed a new roof, when the church needed plumbing, when the church needed new pews, like they called each other and they went and dedicated all day to paint, to fix, to get up in there and to do some good. Because they didn't have the monetary means to support, but they gave themselves, and it was beautiful. Well, in one occasion, I was down there working, and I'm working on my laptops and my bulletin boards and like focusing on like planning and strategizing how to evangelize. And they're there cleaning and doing stuff. And then they see me and I'm like, hey, what's up, guys? ¿Cómo estamos? Give them some Cokes to like, chill, hang out for a second. And then I say like, oh, I got to go. And they're like, oh, ¿a dónde vas? Where are you going? I got to get ready for youth group and I got to go to Costco and buy all this stuff for, 100 Capri Suns and hot dogs and hamburgers, to boost your life going to Costco. And they're like, oh, okay. Eso es tu trabajo. Like, that's your work. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, and then I see them start clowning, right? And they start talking that stuff. And then I go and I say, what's up? I dap them up. I say, I got to go, like, ciao, bye. And I give them a handshake and they like feel my hand and they're like, this guy hasn't.
He's not working like we're working.
No, you don't work like you do like church stuff, but you're not like, working. And I'm like, oh, word. Okay. Like, so it's very interesting, like that mentality. And I love those guys. And, it was a weak moment at that time, but all's forgiven. Like, because when they see like, we're going to be there to be there with their kids, and we're offering ourselves in ministry for them and being like Christ, like they get it, right? They get it. But there are those moments where that machismo comes in and they start judging you, not just if you're working, but how you're working. And if it doesn't look like, from the sweat of your brow, like, getting your hands dirty, well, that's not work. That's volunteer stuff. Like, come on, And so it's just very interesting how, that was like what, 2-3 years ago, and so it's still there, but, having conversations like these and having it out in the open, I think it's going to help our folks recognize it and call it out and call us on. No problem being called out. No problem. But then call me on to something,
Yeah. Tell me don't just tell me what I'm doing wrong. Tell me what we can do to make this better. Right. Yeah. Where can we go? What's the path forward? Yeah, man, I got you. Okay. Well, dude, no, thanks for sharing that. And by the way, thanks for being so vulnerable, like just right from the get-go, man, like really, just being so open. These are real world things to talk about, man. It's hard to talk about this kind of thing, especially as those guys, man. And then I want to be clear too, like, we're not talking about like, this whole like foo-foo new wave thing where, dude, you're like a guy and you're just like always crying and talking about your emotions and like, whatever, you know what I mean? We're not talking about that. What we're talking about is just, like running from your true self, man, and running from like what's really going on inside and running and like not making time or putting energy into like understanding like how you work and how you tick and like the truth of things really, not hiding under these this facade of trying to be a certain way so you can try to be manly, right? Like, that's not authentic strength. Authentic strength is like what you said, man. I'm broken and I'm working on it. We're all broken, but man, there's real courage, there's authentic strength in knowing that you're broken, recognizing it, and then just like having the guts to work on it bit by bit. It's not pretty, but that's the real path of like truth. That's the real path of life right there, man. And dude, I think this is like you talking about, you use Dak as a good example, and you talked about a little bit about vulnerability. Dude, I'd love to get your thoughts too on, like, we've been talking about machismo, which again is like excessive masculine pride. How do you think, and I know you've talked about this already throughout our conversation, but like, how do you think that excessive pride, especially in this context, could really kind of stunt your growth in faith, your growth in closeness to the Lord, your spiritual life?
Sure. I think you can stunt it by you're shooting yourself in the foot, right? It's very hard to, to be on the journey and then have a co-pilot, like, Jesus be my co-pilot type stuff. It's very hard for you to comply with grace when it's all about you. And if you're in vice and in that habitual sin, it is all about you. The moment you get in an argument at work, or you're called to task, or you get called out, or you get chewed out by your wife, right? You're going to seek that instant gratification, consolation, right? And so on the flip side, Jesus can console you, absolutely, but it ain't going to be instant, and will you stay patient for that? If you're conditioned to always flee, you will not be conditioned for like that heavy duty consolation, and you will get frustrated and you'll bounce at the first sign of trouble because I'm not instantly gratified, right? And so that's why, like, having how do you combat that? Like a regular confessor, someone that can call you out on your stuff, right? And ask those questions and be like, yeah, I know you have a habitual sin or addiction to pornography. Right? I know that because I've been on the journey with you. Well, as men, like, and I know this, for sure, I put myself out there. Like early on in my, in my 20s, like I would manipulate the sacrament of confession. I'd be like, all right, I know I'm going to go out on this particular day. I know this priest is going to be available for confessions. He knows my story. I'm not going to go to him. Right? I'm not going to go to him because he's going to call me out on my stuff. Right? I just want to be able to say what I want to say without worrying about, the glares and the stares. Right? Well, that's twofold. One, you're evading, and then the other is there's a lack of trust there and understanding of what the sacrament's supposed to do. And so there's that too. So yeah, absolutely. You can be spiritually immature and stunted because you're still conditioning yourself like the kid with the lollipop. And you always go back for that lick. You always go back for that extra gratification because things aren't going your way. And that's not to say that, when I mentioned like a man cave and going and retreating, there's different, like using your leisure, right, to rest and to resettle and recalibrate is a must. Like, do your podcast or read your book and play Madden if you like, do you. But if that becomes at the expense of your vocation and your calling as a man to be a father and a brother and a son, that's where it can be sinful. And yeah, paying attention to your habits is key. So and the only way to get that is to get in there with the Lord, to make those appointments with the Lord, to pray, because in so doing, you'll be able to see like the imperfections, in the mirror. So I've been told, so I've read.
I've read, yeah.
In theory. And I will at some point talk about like these saints that really are kind of the antidote to machismo as well a little bit later. But yeah, because
dude, man. Well, like before we get there, that's awesome. I want to hear that. That's great. I didn't know you were going to bring that. That's awesome. Before we get there though, actually, you know what? Let's get there. Let me real quickly though. Let me just say, I like this one definition I found of pride, and it said, "Pride is the excess love of one's own excellence," and this is highly connected to, again, machismo, which is like an excess of pride. And I just I like the key word there is love, right? Like, it's not that you're not proud of your, like, it's okay to be proud of yourself. It's okay to have pride in when it's justified, and especially when it's like related to something good or a good standard. For example, like, I don't know, you work hard and you earn your degree. I mean, that's something you should be proud of, right? Or like you do a good job at something. You should be proud of that, like not excessively prideful. You're not in love with your pride, but you should be proud of it, Or like if you have kids and they work hard, you work hard to coach them to accomplish some task. For example, my oldest son is really getting really good at his bike. I'm really proud of him. And I'm proud of myself too, because, I've coached him through it. I'm just, it's a good thing, and I don't want us to come off, I don't think we are, but we're not saying necessarily like you got to be devoid of pride. You got to be a robot. We just, the thing that we got to like look out for, because like you were saying with instant gratification, also pride, like you were saying earlier, is blinding. And it's like, it leads to a lot of other vices, right? St. Aquinas said it's like the queen vice, so to speak. We just don't want it to be, we don't want to be a slave to our pride. We want to be in love with our pride. So I just want to make sure I said that, but I'd love to hear, dude, your thoughts on like specific saints that we can help use to combat machismo.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, and yeah, just to reiterate, like, again, be rest in security of your accomplishments, like, and that your shine, reflect that back up to the Lord. Like, the Lord loves nothing more than to be excited for you and cheer you on when you're, and think what you might about Kanye West, right? But he talks about how, when he's singing the songs to the Lord, he believes that the Lord wants him to show off and show out, like, in the sense of like, nothing makes him more happier than hearing his name proclaimed, right? And there's a grace there. There's a beauty there. So definitely, if it's rooted in the true, the good, and the beautiful, be proud about that. Share that, because there's other folks that need that and maybe are ashamed of that. And so we need to go ahead and shout that from the rooftops a little bit more.
Yeah, like have confidence in that. Trust that.
Absolutely, yeah. Man.
Got you.
For our kids, man, especially for our kids. Let's see. Saints that really can help combat machismo and toxic masculinity. I mean, some of these are, are your like, oh, of course, like, you got Joseph, man. Like, Joseph is our first one. Joseph is a guy who we just hear about through, not necessarily through scripture, but just tradition and what we hear about. Anything good that we can say about Jesus, we can say about his parents, right? And how he was raised by them. And Joseph's example, and not even having a word, in the Bible, in the scriptures, like, that's some humility there. Like the legend the memory of Joseph is one of no words, just work. Say Joseph the worker, pray for us, right? Someone that heard God's call, that that has that dream and moves. One of my favorite images of Joseph is that, and some movies and some art depict this, where tradition tells us that Joseph was not there at the moment of birth of Jesus. Now we can debate this all around, right? But that he wasn't there, that it was an intimate moment between God and Mary, right? And that Joseph was somewhere else, like, and a lot of tradition, a lot of sacred art has depicted that Joseph was sleeping. Like, way to go, Joseph!
Really?
Like, you're passed out. And I don't know if you've ever seen Pope Francis.
Like, I've been working all day.
Right? That Joseph, Pope Francis has on by his bedside on his nightstand, he has the image of Joseph sleeping, like, and he's just like laid out sleeping. And there's this beauty of like, but it's potential energy, right? Like, he's ready. It's getting cocked back only to like fly the moment, like, we got to flee, and he does it. He knows exactly what to do, or at least he plays along like he does, enough to have confidence and say, like, this is the Lord's will. We got to bounce. We got to move. And having that wisdom to tap in is huge. So Joseph in those things, and that's kind of maybe extracurricular, because it's not necessarily in scripture, but it takes away nothing from Christ and from Mary, but this idea that that Joseph is someone that moves and acts. Saint Jose Maria Escriva is
Oh, love him.
boy, and
JME, man. JME. I call him JME. That's just my thing. But yeah, I
that's
love him.
cool. I love that. I love that you have your thing. Here's why, because like, especially for men, like I always had in all my men's groups, I always like promoted like the way, the furrow, and the forge, like the little purple book.
Those books, yeah.
Has all of his quotes, especially like his Stations of the Cross. I kid you not. You want to get thrown in the dirt real quick, and you think you're something cool? Let Escriva speak to your heart real fast and put you down for a second. He's gonna pick you up. He's gonna dust you off, but he's gonna put you in your place real quick if you think you're somebody hot, because Escriva is on fire, man. He is absolutely lit with the Holy Spirit, and just how he talks to men and speaks to their heart is something that is like, it's like he shocks you and then he like motivates you and says like, let's go, you know? And so Escriva for me as a man, I need that kick in the pants. I come from a football background. I coach football, and I like the kick in the pants. But not like in the abuse because I've experienced that too. But it's this, I'm gonna, you know, toss you around a little bit, but I'm gonna then call you to be more. And Escriva does that beautifully, I think.
Dude, I gotta second that, man. Like the best way I can describe, well, first of all, I got that book, that little book, gosh, now I'm blanking out. The Stations of the Cross. I have that on my bedside. There was a period of time where I read it pretty much every night. You're right. It's amazing. And it's, by the way, it's famous. It's like, there's so like, I don't know, a cajillion copies when it first came out, and it's still selling. But what I love about him is like, he's just so clear and direct. Like just tells it how it is, man. But in like a super loving, relevant way, man. It's like you said, like, he calls you to something greater, man. That's probably the best way I've heard. That's the perfect way of putting it. Yeah, man. Just got to second you on that, man.
There you go, man. And then finally, man, Peter. I love me some Peter, man. Peter is that, you know, like, I don't know, like, he's that dog, man. He's like that dude that like thinks he's got it, and he's like a blundering idiot at one moment. But yeah, he speaks like, you know, blessed are you, you know, Peter, like Holy Spirit speaking through you, like the things that come out of this man's mouth is at one moment like shake my head, and the other moment is like praise him. You got it, Peter. And the beauty, because his faults are all depicted, right? But then there's that moment towards the end where Jesus reassures him, like, hey, you know, you will show your love for me. It's right after he says, like, you know, I love you. You know, I love you. You know, I love you, right? I love you like a friend. I love you like a stranger. I love you like whatever. Then it comes down to like, Peter, like one day they're going to take you, and they're going to take you somewhere you don't want to go, and they're going to chain you up, and, you know, and you will do it. You do love me. Like, and that like really stays with me. Like, he still like wants that. Like, he wants to love, and he will sacrifice. It takes him a minute. But he eventually does lay it all down. And so Peter, for sure, man. So yeah.
All right. So Joseph, Jose Maria Escriva, JME, and Peter, dude.
Yeah, man. I think
those rock star lineup, man.
They can take you to the whole gamut, man. You can see like their faults, except Joseph, and then you can see like, man, like they're rising to the occasion, and they combat, I think, in today's postmodern, like the toxic masculinity, the machismo. I think the antidote is found in these three saints, and so at least they've been a big grace in my life. So,
well, dude, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but is there anything like a particular devotional, particular prayer? There's no right or wrong answer. Is there a particular book? You know, anything like something like maybe like an actionable item that maybe someone listening to this may want to look into if they want to kind of grow in this area, or they just want to, you know, that maybe has helped you with like,
sure.
You know, with pride, or with this machismo, or just this area.
Sure. So we already mentioned Escriva's greatest hits, right? The Way, the Furrow, and the Forge. And then I think his Way of the Cross, or Christ Walking By, those works by Escriva kick butt. His novena, like will really like notch it up a little bit. I'm a big Pope Benedict guy, Pope Benedict Emeritus, and his collection by the Magnificat of all his daily calendar meditations.
Oh yeah, I have that book. Yeah, I love that book.
So digestible and so like boom, like hard hitting. And like I have like 3 copies in different parts of like I think I got one in the bathroom, like one in the kitchen, one in the car. Like
Dang, man, that's awesome.
In the car with me, but also like, at school with me because I just want to pull it out and just like, yeah, it's like super, super, super awesome for me. And so,
Amen.
yeah, his meditations, Benedictus, I think it's called Benedictus, sold out everywhere. I don't know, like you gotta do some work to find it, but his calendar meditations on the daily, Benedict works. Escriva kills, obviously, so good. Is there another one? Dan England and the Noonday Devil is something to check out as well. Like, yeah. Other than that, Praying to Divine Mercy. Praying to Divine Mercy, developing that so it just comes freely out of your lips, like
the Divine Mercy Chaplet. Yep.
Praying the Divine Mercy Chaplet is huge, and then develop that with yourself. And then if you're married, guys, or if you're engaged, introduce it or reintroduce it, or like be the initiator and present it to your wife, and do that. Because I tell you what, when things are heated, between me and my wife, and we're going at it, and my passion, my Latino heat starts happening. I tell you what, holding her hand and praying that rosary and asking for mercy, is definitely like incredible for our marriage, and for me and my further trying to grasp what is true masculinity. Like true masculinity is someone that like invites mercy into his life.
Wow, man. Invites mercy into his life. Never heard that, man. I love that. That's great, dude. That's powerful, man. Yeah, and we talked a lot about pride, and one of the things that I was hoping would kind of come up is humility, because in a way it's like the opposite of pride, so to speak. And one of the things, I'll just share this. One of the things that we're working on, I'm trying to do my best, but basically every day I've been praying the litany of humility, right? And man, that just, for me, that just does it. There's specifically one line that says, it's for those of you who are not familiar with litany of humility, it's just like, they're not exactly even sure who the original author of it is, but basically they found it on
I love that even more.
Yeah, because they were so humble that they didn't even take credit for it. So basically they traced it back to, I can't believe it, I think it was a bishop or a father, I could be getting that wrong, but basically someone that worked in the Vatican, and basically found it on his desk, and it's just like all these small little prayers. And the one line that always gets me every time is like, that in the opinion of the world, that others may increase and I may decrease. And I'm just like, that's, for me, that's it. Because, I've got this need for recognition, validation, affirmation, like all these needs, right? I got all this incompleteness that I want or that I need. And God, I don't want my life to be about that, man. I don't want my relationship with God, my relationship with my wife, relationship with my kids, my family, my friends. I don't want it to just be defined by that or ruled by that. And like, I'm trying to bit by bit, every day when I say that, I try to not to be a robot and not to kill all the pride, because there's good pride, but like, I'm trying to kill the bad pride, man. I'm trying to like throw like weed killer on that stuff, man. And some spike ADDF or whatever that's called. And then the other thing for me, I'm a big believer in the power of a spoken word, like the spoken word, man. Like what I mean by that is like, a lot of people talk about visualization and all this kind of stuff. And I guess it kind of ties to that, but basically like we all have to tell our own stories to ourselves, meaning like things that mean something to us, like only we understand them. We might not be able to put it into word. We have to develop these these mantras, right? The power of the spoken word that we use in hard times to get us motivated, to get us to keep going. And one of the ones that I've used that really means a lot to me is servium, right? You know, Saint Michael crushed pride, right? He's the first person that, or you know, he crushed pride, right? He's the archangel that crushed pride, and he said servium. He said, "I will serve," to Lucifer's non-servium. And servium has just, to me, has been this reminder, this check, this hit in the gut that, like, dude, I need to be about, I will serve, not I'm not coming to be served. You know what I mean? And I try to like, I don't know, I'm a stubborn person. I try to beat that into me. But anyways, we've had a lot, we've talked a lot about a lot of awesome points. You brought up a lot of great insights. But I wanted to make sure we save time to also talk about your important, awesome work with the Holy Ruckus, man. Bro, tell me a little bit more about the Holy Ruckus, the vision, the mission, what you're doing, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Holy Ruckus comes from Pope Francis's words on World Youth Day Rio, that we should go out into the streets, into the not, oncoming traffic, be careful, but in the parish communities, like, you should go out and evangelize. You should make a mess, a holy mess, he calls it. Like, that's the strict translation. A ruckus, un lío, right? And so Leo, there you go.
There we go, baby.
There you go. And so definitely, like, there's this sanctification that needs to continue happening in the church, and we got so much stuff that, the rad trads and the charismaniacs, all this stuff, and I don't like Pope. Like, no, we just need to, like, be about our holiness. We need to be about our holiness and bringing people together. And so the Holy Ruckus sets out to, through blogs, podcasts, video content, and our podcast network, try to have these conversations of different walks of life and different ways to go about it. So it's so cool. It strives to be orthodox, absolutely, but we're trying to talk about things that, like, maybe other folks, like, I can't do it better than Mike Schmitz, Father Mike Schmitz. I can't do it better than Libertas Live, but they're in the middle. There's somewhere in there. There's a little space where we can work, and we can talk about, like, well, what does it mean, like, the dignity of a human person in regards to the unborn, in regards to minorities and immigration and Black Lives Matter. Like, we don't have to agree with the organizations, obviously, for whatever else, but also, like, screw the politics and everything. Like, but where is the faith angle, and where is the church speaking boldly about the dignity of all persons? Like, that's what we're focused on, and trying to be that voice in there. So yeah, it's a lot of fun. We've been at it we just did 4 years in September.
Oh, awesome.
We've been at it for 4 years doing the podcast, and I do it with a buddy of mine, me and Father Pat Mullen out in DC. So it's fun and crazy. We got other podcasts that we've done. We're doing a Spanish branch called El Santo Leo, which is just the Holy Ruckus in Spanish. So a lot going on. We got bloggers, and so but I want to put out an announcement for the fellas. Do me a favor, fellas and ladies, if you're listening to this, go ahead and subscribe. Go ahead and find us on Instagram, Facebook, but really tap in. And if there's any writers out there, that have something to say, and I'm really picking on the fellas here, because we need more fellas to write. So if you're interested in blogging about your faith and you really got something to say, there's a way to submit, a blog entry, and to see if that's something that we want to go with. But other than that, man, yeah, just trying to stay humble and stay trucking along and having fun, man. It's been a blast, and we're so excited to be in this space and create, dude. Like, this is so much better than just playing Madden all day. So it's good.
Dude, well, and how can people, what's the website? How can they follow you?
Yeah. So the website is theholyruckus.com, on Facebook, Instagram at The Holy Ruckus. Me, Josh Mosh 355. That's just what I knew as a kid, Josh Mosh 355. And so that's on Instagram. Other than that, the podcast and everything is on Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts. You just got to type in The Holy Ruckus, and then all of our podcasts under our network and different priests that do stuff for us. And there's a podcast called Here to Heaven with Father Bob Kilner, and he's Opus Dei based, and so his stuff is on the money all the time, and it's like a quick hit, 10 minutes, 5 minutes of just you're in the car and you need something to just pump you up. He's got it. So there's always something. So yeah, we're working, man. We're hustling.
That's
we're just
great, man. Getting after it, baby. I love it, man. I love it. Trabajando.
Mhm.
Well, dude, I'm so grateful you came on. Dude, you got me fired up, man. You got me motivated. Dude, you're super blessed. You're super charismatic. And I just want to thank you for, playing that outward, man. And just for being such a great example of faith and resilience, man. And just continuing to give, man. Well, dude, again, so grateful. And, dude, we're going to have you back on sometime.
Absolutely, man. Let's do some more work together. And thanks again to all the folks at Libertas Alive. I love what you're doing. And are you still running? You're not running?
Oh yeah, every day, man. I have to. It's like almost the air I breathe, man.
Was it like 18 miles like every day?
Oh no, no, nah, man. I can't do that. I literally run like 2 miles a day most of the time.
No?
It's just
Okay.
like little stuff, just little
Yeah,
stuff to keep moving.
God bless you, man. My vice principal at my school at Pilati in Laurel, Maryland, St. Vincent Pilati, he like runs like 18 miles like it's nothing, like it's water. And I'm like,
Yeah, that's not me, and I definitely don't got the time for that too, man. I wish I could, but maybe we're all in different seasons of life, right? We all have different seasons of life, and maybe once our kids are a little bit older, maybe we'll have a little more time for that kind of stuff.
sure thing, man. Thanks so much, Leo.
All right, brother. Well, we'll chat soon, and God bless, my man. Have a great night.
Peace, man. God bless you. See ya.